Hey all, and welcome back to the third HellfireComms Disneython. Today we're going to be taking a look at one of Rich's picks. This is the 2015 live-action remake slash adaptation, I guess, of Cinderella, which is actually quite fitting because I believe in the second Disneython, Richie and I covered the classic Cinderella, the traditional 2D animated one.
We did indeed. I did actually want to do the live-action Cinderella in that one, but it didn't quite work out, so I'm quite excited this time round.
I sense beneath your words is a tone of frustration, of vengeance. Yeah, I kind of vetoed that because I wanted less faff with recording stuff, so we kept traditional, we kept live-action stuff, rather, off the docket, but now we're trying to be a bit more experimental, much like the first Disneython, so you'll get a wide variety of stuff this time, but let's get right on into the film. If you guys need instructions on how to sync our audio to your media file, please check the video description. It's got the length of the copy we're watching, what frame rate it runs at, what resolution, so you can more easily match up with the original file. Here we go. In 3, 2, 1. Okay, 2015 Cinderella. Why this film exactly, mate? What drew you to it?
I think it's basically because it's just a really, really charming film. Obviously, Disney have been on a proper live-action remake bent as of late. Pretty much started with 2014's Maleficent, and then has continued on since then. And I would say of the ones released so far, Cinderella is, in my mind, the best.
That was a very nice segue, by the way.
Oh yeah, I mean, there's a lot of really stunning bits of cinematography in this film. Like, it's beautiful.
Well, we know what you're like when it comes to a musical, but how does it fare as a film, would you say?
Well, actually, it's not a musical at all. It's a straight film. It's a straight, completely traditional telling of Cinderella.
Huh.
Which, you'll think, look at it and just go, huh, that's interesting. But actually, I think it's one of the reasons why Cinderella works, because one of the issues that many of the other live-action films have had, in my opinion anyway, is that they are either embarrassed by the original animated films, or they're trying to ape them too much, but then are required to do other stuff to make it fresh. So, for instance, you've got The Jungle Book, which is an okay film, but it seems embarrassed by the fact that the original was a musical.
Mm-hmm.
And so includes 2 songs out of the fact that it kind of has to, but doesn't really feel like putting in the effort to be a full musical. And then you've got things like Beauty and the Beast, which tried to seriously ape the original animated film, but felt that it needed to add in all this extra crap that just wasn't necessary.
Like, wasn't the extended edition on DVD bad enough with those songs that weren't even in the original one? They feel so jarring compared to the classic ones we all know and love.
I mean, hey, I do like Human Again. That one is fun, and the reason that was included was because it was in the Broadway version, and I love the Broadway version.
Well, but, you know, He Lives in You was a Broadway song that was put into Lion King 2, but you know what the difference is between that and Human Again? He Lives in You is a fucking good song!
I would argue they're both good songs, but that's besides the point. So with Cinderella, what it does in comparison to those other live-action films is it decides to tell the same story in a different fashion.
Right.
So it's not a musical, because, I mean, at the end of the day, really, the music was not the best part of Cinderella.
Not really, no.
So it wasn't really the prime focus, so it kind of takes that away, and it decides to tell it in a fashion that is much more in line with today's standards of filmmaking and storytelling, but it's still incredibly traditional and still has effectively sort of the same heart as the original film. It's got the same beauty, it's got homages to the original film. I mean, I would say that, one of Walt Disney's favourite pieces of animation ever that he created was the dress transformation in Cinderella. And so special attention was paid to the dress transformation in this film. And, I mean, I would say I actually prefer this one to the original animated one. But, so it's a loving remake of the story without having to actually be a complete straight remake, or going, I'm too embarrassed to be a traditional Cinderella.
So it hits that happy medium then?
Yeah, it definitely does for me, anyway. I think some people have mixed thoughts about it, but in general it was pretty well received, and I mean, it is Kenneth Branagh, so it's directed by Kenneth Branagh.
Yeah.
And it is his highest grossing film to date as a director.
Wow.
Which is insane, but obviously, Disney machine.
Yeah, I guess. How is it critically received, mate? Because we're just dealing with the intro to this. Very interesting how we actually see Cinderella's parents as well.
Yes, I mean, this is part of the reason why I think this film does quite well, is that it adds backstory, but it adds backstory in a interesting fashion that doesn't feel like, what is the point of this? It actually makes sense in the context of the narrative, and it provides character development and all that jazz, so it works. But yes, so critically it was received pretty positively. So I'm just scrolling down the Wikipedia page to that point. So, key praise was given to Cate Blanchett as Lady Tremaine, Lily James as Cinderella, Helena Bonham Carter as the fairy godmother, Patrick Doyle's musical score, the faithfulness to the original animated film in terms of its feeling, and Sandy Powell's costume designs, which are beautiful.
Right.
There is some criticism for the screenplay, and there were a few bits of controversy that happened when the film came out. But it holds an 84% approval rating on Rotten Tomatoes.
That's not bad.
It's pretty okay. The consensus is effectively a refreshingly traditional film in a revisionist era. Kenneth Branagh's Cinderella proves Disney hasn't lost any of its old-fashioned magic. And that's basically the line that you sort of walk with this remake of Cinderella, in that it's big on charm, it's very nostalgic, it's beautiful, it has got themes of love, but also loss and resilience, and so on and so forth. And its kind of biggest force is the idea of empathy. But it does have, perhaps, for some people anyway, it is too simple, it is too traditional, it is perhaps overly saccharine in terms of how it presents some things, because it's that whole classic romanticism that you see in a lot of like the early Disney stuff. And a lot of people weren't too keen on that. There was also a whole thing of so Scott Mendelsohn, oh no, it wasn't Scott Mendelsohn of Forbes, it was Guy Lodge of The Guardian, said that it would have been nice to see this newer version of Cinderella follow in the footsteps of Frozen's progressive, quasi-feminist leads. So the idea of Cinderella effectively being a passive protagonist in a way, things happen to her, rather than her actually doing things for herself, which is a problem with the original Cinderella story anyway. And also, people have some issues with the way it ends, which we'll come to when we get to it. So that's an issue people have.
Okay.
I can't remember what some of the other ones were, but I know that that's sort of one of the things. Oh yeah, the other one was Lily James's waist. That was a problem. But we'll get to that one when we get to that as well.
Dare I even ask?
Basically, when we get to the dress, which is obviously going to be a massive talking point because it's beautiful, her waist is incredibly thin in it, and there was a kind of massive outcry when the film came out going, oh my god, they've CGI'd her waist to make it look smaller. This is clearly bad for body positivity and all that jazz.
Did they actually do it though?
No. That was actually her waist. It is that tiny. And while you could perhaps argue that they probably should not have done that, the reason that it looks as tiny as it does is because the skirt is huge.
Right.
And also she's corseted, which you would be in this sort of time period. So it's just like, well...
Do people just not understand context these days? You can't just point at something and criticise without some backing information.
Exactly. I mean, if you're going to criticise anything, you could criticise the fact that they CGI'd her feet to fit into the glass slippers, because, I mean, obviously you can't have actual glass slippers.
Oh, that's hilarious to me. Like, you weren't expecting that, were you, Tremaine? Go fuck yourself. Now, we basically covered the length and breadth of the film already, so what are we going to talk about for the other 90 minutes here, Richard?
Well, I think there's actually quite a lot to talk about, because really, all we've seen up to this point is Cinderella's early childhood days, her birth, the unfortunate passing of her mother, who was brilliantly portrayed by the amazing Hayley Atwell, who most people will recognise as Agent Peggy Carter.
Oh, that's who that was. Like, I was looking at her face, and she looked familiar, but the hair was throwing me off.
Yeah, I love Hayley Atwell. She's phenomenal. So that's her. You've also got, as soon as I can get to him, Ben Chaplin as her father, who people would recognise as soon as I can find something that actually looks recognisable. Actually, not a lot.
That's fine. Move on.
But the key here is obviously you've got the stunning Kate Blanchett as Lady Tremaine.
Perfect timing with that, mate.
Oh god, it's... Kate Blanchett does such a great job in this film for me, because obviously one of the things with the original Lady Tremaine is that she's just sort of this wholeheartedly evil hag. Like, it's that very early Disney... the lime green, the sort of devilish stare, and I think Kate Blanchett manages to pull that off. I mean, already you've got this absolutely stunning outfit.
Yeah.
And there's just that sort of piercing, cool gaze.
Like, the smile does not reach the eyes, I think would be a term best used to describe her.
But as the film progresses, you begin to see other facets of her character. So she's not just the truly evil stepmother. There's actually a bit of depth to her. And while she is still an evil hag, you actually understand why she is the way she is.
Right.
And I think that's the sort of depth that really works with these sorts of characters. It's not doing the Maleficent trick of saying the person you thought was bad actually wasn't.
Ugh.
Oh, that film pisses me off so much. But it does say maybe there is a bit more to the story than you thought there was. And yes, this is about as much as you're going to be getting of the mice. They're adorable, but they're not overly omnipresent as they were in the original animated film. Thank God.
Just a bit of a nod, would you say?
Pretty much. Like, they're there, she calls them, well, one of them's Gus, and so on and so forth. And she does talk to them, but they don't talk back.
Okay.
And they aren't the comic relief for the film.
Fair enough, mate, fair enough. What did Cinderella's mother die of, if I may ask? Because we were talking over it.
I believe that it was probably something like tuberculosis. I'm not sure. It's not particularly specified.
Okay, she died because plotitis.
Effectively, but I mean, that's Cinderella in a nutshell. Her mother dies, her father then remarries, etc. But the key thing to take from her mother's death is her dying wish, which was to have courage and be kind.
Right.
And ultimately that forms pretty much all of Ella's, because at this point in the film she's Ella, she's not Cinderella yet.
Right.
That's what makes her moral compass, effectively. I think it's one of the film's sort of strongest points of you understand why Cinderella is as strong-willed as she is despite everything that she goes through.
Like, do you even need me for this commentary? You seem to love this enough to be able to, as usual, fill out 95% of the commentary.
Well, you see, this is why I choose these things, because I just really ridiculously love them.
Well, you know, it's another piece of content, and it's easier for me to edit after the fact, so why don't you ask me questions from time to time instead of the reverse?
Well then, in that case, What is your sort of opinion on, like, obviously we did the original Cinderella, but how do you feel going into this? Because obviously the original Cinderella it's okay, it's a decent classic Disney film, but how do you feel going into a remake of that story?
Well, I mean, growing up, you had a lot of like live action remakes of like the classic fairy tale. Maybe not so much to the Disney version. Like, I swear there was like a version starring Brandy, who was a
there was actually
pop star, music star, and I have vivid memories of that. I think Whoopi Goldberg was the fairy godmother.
No, it wasn't Whoopi Goldberg who was the fairy godmother. It was Whitney Houston, actually.
Well, close enough.
Slightly different strengths, but that one's actually Rodgers and Hammerstein's Cinderella, which is quite a good one as well.
Yeah, I remember enjoying it. It was pretty well put together. But yeah, going into it, I'm not as cynical as I would be for, like, say, Beauty and the Beast, starring the hot female actress of the time, Emma Watson, who cannot carry a tune or act to save her life. I'm sorry, I don't think she's a very good actress.
Yeah, like, there is time to discuss Beauty and the Beast, the live-action remake. Emma Watson's easily my biggest frustration, well, one of my biggest frustrations with that film, because, no, she can't sing, or at least she can carry a tune, but she cannot sing well enough to pull off the score of Beauty and the Beast. And while ideologically she fits the idea of Belle, she actually just ends up being Emma Watson in Beauty and the Beast.
Basically. Alright, so who are the Ugly Stepsisters played by Maya?
The Ugly Stepsisters are played by Holiday Granger and Sophie McSharer.
Never heard of either of them.
So you should actually pay a bit of attention to Holiday Granger, because she's actually brilliant. If anybody has watched the BBC's adaptation of J.K. Rowling's Strike series, because obviously she wrote a series of books under, I think it was Robert Galbraith, which was the Strike series. She's Robin Ellicott in that, and she's brilliant in it. And she has been in a number of other things. I think the one that most people would probably recognise her from is being in Bourgeois, I think, as Lucrezia Borgia. But she has been in sort of various other things as well.
Oh man, we're moving to this stage of her imprisonment pretty fast.
We are indeed, but you see, that's because bloody stepmother's absolute evil cow.
What happened to the father? Did I miss something?
So her father had to go away on a trip. Because he's effectively a sort of merchant type.
Okay, right, yeah.
So the thing to remember is that before he left, he asked each of them, so Ella and Anastasia and Drizella, what they wanted him to bring back. And Anastasia and Drizella basically said some such things like clothes or a hat or what have you. But what Ella said was, can you get the first branch of a tree that you pass? Because that way I know that when you have it, you'll think of me. And when you kind of bring it back, I'll know that you were thinking of me throughout your entire journey.
And I can use it to beat Lady Tremaine into the dirt. How do you like this treatment?
It's not quite the vibe she was going for, but still. So yeah, other ugly stepsister, Drizella, is played by Sophie McSharer, who most people would know for being Ros McCain in Waterloo Road, but also for being Daisy Mason in Downton Abbey.
Okay, never watched an episode of Downton, but everyone raved about it. Is it over now?
It is over now, yes. It finished, actually. I'm just double checking, but I think it finished in the same year that Cinderella came out.
Okay. Is it just me, or did Cinderella's room have a little bit of Tangled vibe to it?
It did a little bit, but I think that's because it's a tower.
It's the rounded ceiling that I think did it.
Yeah. So yes, actually, I've realised I haven't actually said anything about Lily James herself, who plays Ella. Who I think perfect choice for this role. She does a really good job of bringing that naive charm to the role while still having that intense inner control.
Not too soft, not too hard, I think.
Exactly. And what's quite fun, actually, is that she was also in Downton Abbey.
Jesus, did they just, like, go down the casting list and recruit that way?
I don't know, they might have done. I mean, you've got to think, Downton Abbey was a huge British thing at the time, and obviously Kenneth Branagh is a British director, actor, everything. So it makes sense. But she was also Natasha Rostova in the TV series of War and Peace, and she was also in Baby Driver, which was by Edgar Wright, and I love Baby Driver. That film is amazing.
I don't know about Baby Driver, but I love his other films. Like, I love Shaun of the Dead.
Yes.
Hot Fuzz is probably my favourite film, period. I love it to pieces. World's End is fine. Probably the weakest of the Cornetto trilogy, but Scott Pilgrim vs. the World was pretty dope. I
mean, yeah, I absolutely adore Edgar Wright's films. Like, I would happily watch them any day of the week. It makes me quite sad that Ant-Man never ended up being the Edgar Wright film it should have been. But hey, that is a different discussion.
Jesus Christ, Richie. It's probably a good job at a musical.
Well, I think that's sort of part of it, is that... I mean, that was one of the jokes in the original Cinderella anyway, but it was... I think in the original it was actually more bearable than Gisela singing there. That was pretty... Oh my god, what is this screeching in my ear?
Where was the film shot exactly? Because the on-location stuff is gorgeous.
So I believe that actually it was filmed at Pinewood Studios in Buckinghamshire in England.
Okay, so prime British, like, countryside.
Exactly, and I mean there are various other locations in the country, so bits of it are filmed at Blenheim Palace, bits of it at Windsor Castle, Cliveden, the Old Royal Naval College and Black Park. So pretty much it was all done in the UK, which is awesome. And right now we have just learned that Ella's father didn't make it back from his journey.
What, did he die at sea or something?
I can't remember if this exactly died at sea. I think it was that he fell ill and died on the journey, but obviously he never let go of that branch. And the one thing that he made sure was that it made it back to Ella.
I did think it was a bit weird how Cinderella was being treated slightly like the help, but still was allowed to sit at the dinner table. Now I feel that's going to turn on a dime.
Pretty much, yes. And it's that slow build, because if you think about it, we're like 20 minutes into the film, and effectively we're not even at the starting point of the original Cinderella.
I like the pacing of this so far. I think the first 20 minutes have been good.
Oh god, yeah, like, it's one of the things where it's quite a slow burn, but it's paced just right, so that it's got that nice comfy feel to it as you trickle along, and it creates that grandiose sense of scale. I mean, that's just a beautifully heartbreaking shot.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I think it really does work.
Oh, had to send all the help away because just can't afford it. But don't worry, I think there's going to be a solution to this economic problem.
Yeah, it's not going to be very pleasant, but pretty much.
All I can think about now is that one gif from the original Disney film, where it's like Cinderella in a daze while the ugly stepsisters pile clothes onto her.
Yeah, that is a pretty iconic bit.
It's just a very pleasant film to watch so far. Like, obviously we have the volume down low, so sometimes I can't hear people talking, but just the cinematography and everything is just very well shot, which Kenneth Branagh has always had a good eye for, I think.
Oh god, yeah. I mean, I think Kenneth Branagh is awesome. He's maybe not the best director ever.
No.
I mean, I do like most of his Shakespeare films that he's done. I mean, obviously he's done Henry V, Much Ado About Nothing, Othello, Hamlet, Love's Labour's Lost, As You Like It, and then obviously many other films. I mean, he did The Road to El Dorado, which is hilarious. He also did Thor.
Oh wait, are we talking about Road to El Dorado as in the animated one?
Yeah, he did.
Wow, that I did not know.
Oh no, he didn't direct that. That was Don Paul and Eric Bibbo Bergman. It's the Wikipedia page. It's confusing me. It's because it's understarred in. But but he did direct the original Thor, which the less about that one the better. But if there's one thing that you can say about the original Thor is that it's got a great visual style.
Yeah, like the Asgard stuff is gorgeous. Not so sure about the Earth stuff, but when we get to the MCU fun after Infinity War Part 2, we'll talk about that.
Definitely. I mean, I think part of that is thanks to the cinematographer, who is, I'm going to butcher this name, but Harris Zambalaku, who has actually worked with Kenneth Branagh quite a lot, actually also on Thor, so that makes a lot of sense. He has also worked with Kenneth Branagh on Sleuth, Jack Ryan, Shadow Recruit, Cinderella here, Murder on the Orient Express, which is Branagh's most recent film, and then he's also working with him on the Artemis Fowl film, which is coming out in 2019, apparently. So I think he's got a great sense of style as well.
There's the Ash. She is slowly turning into Cinderella.
Exactly. And I mean, it's also the reason why, like, in the original Cinderella stories, some variants of it are called, I think it's Aschenputtel. Yeah, that's the German.
Why don't they just adapt that for Western audiences? Like, well, further west than Germany, I should say.
Well, yes, I mean, you probably like the Dutch name a little bit more, because that seems to be Asposter.
I ain't saying nothing. I'm not pissing off that small demographic of HFC fans.
So, yeah.
There we go. Name drop.
Oh, yes. Name drop, roll credits, all sorted.
Wow, what a cunt.
I know, and it's just that cackle. You can see why they got Cate Blanchett to play Hela.
She's so fucking good!
I know! I mean, Cate Blanchett is amazing anyway. I mean, obviously, having been in Galadriel in The Lord of the Rings, and just so many things. But yeah, Cate Blanchett's awesome.
Slight side note, but I thought she was pretty good in, pretty sure she was in Confronting as well as the Archangel Gabriel.
Think she probably was, yes.
It's that androgynous factor, oh, you can barely recognise yourself in a reflection. Yeah, I'm getting her out of this shit, see ya. I'm going to the next live-action film.
The thing is that it's not actually what she's doing. She's just trying to let her emotions out a little bit because she can't abandon her home. And I think that's also one of the things that gets explained in this film that never really was explained in any prior... Well, in the previous original Cinderella. Because one of the things that a lot of people say is just like, well, why doesn't she just leave? If you're getting abused that much, just go.
Royal pride.
But in here, that's her childhood home. It's where all of her memories of her mother and father are. And so she has to keep it for them.
The hunt is on. Do you agree with hunting, Richie?
Definitely not. But obviously it was a thing in this day and age when the film is sort of set, so I can forgive it.
I mean, to a certain degree, I understand. Like drinking, it's just not for me. And I think drinking has more positive attributes in regards to being social.
Yeah, because, drinking doesn't automatically assume that something's going to end up dead.
Yeah. Wow, powerful, actually.
So yes, here we have what is quite clearly the prince.
Prince Charming, yep.
Yes, although here he's actually called Kit.
Okay, Kit Charming.
Don't think it's exactly that, but Kit. And he's going to introduce himself as Kit anyway, who is played quite awesomely by Richard Madden, who most people would recognise as being Robb Stark in Game of Thrones.
Oh, I thought his face seemed familiar. It was annoying me.
Yes, so that's where most people would recognise him from.
My next guess was the dude who plays Bucky in the MCU.
Yeah, Sebastian Stan, not a bad guess, actually.
No.
And it's funny you mentioned, well, it's not necessarily Bucky, but obviously we've had a few MCU talks so far, but there's a particular actor who actually is in the MCU who will be turning up later.
Okay, don't spoil it for me. I'm looking forward to it. That's basically all I can do in these commentaries, since you're the powerhouse. Like, oh, look at that guy. I know him from other films.
One of the other things I really like is that following Cinderella, Kenneth Branagh actually went on to direct Lily James and Richard Madden in a stage version of Romeo and Juliet.
Oh, perfect.
As part of his, because I think he took over Garrick Theatre in London, and he did a series of sort of, I think it was mostly Renaissance plays. There was The Winter's Tale, which he was in with Judi Dench. Judi Dench was amazing. And then he did Romeo and Juliet with these two, which I think is really cool going on from Cinderella.
It's inspired casting because they've already had to play off each other in a romantic role, so why not use that for possibly the most famous romantic tale of all time?
Exactly, although I still am slightly flabbergasted by how people find Romeo and Juliet to be so romantic, because it's just like, but they die at the end.
But they died for each other, mate. They ride till they die.
Yeah, but they died because they were stupid 13 and 16-year-olds.
Hang on, which one was the 13-year-old, which one was the 16-year-old?
Juliet's like 12 in Romeo and Juliet. Romeo is about, I think he's technically 18, but he might be a bit older. Yeah, it's super creepy when you put it in that context.
Yeah, it really is. Italians, what are you gonna do?
Yep.
Well, off I go to be bland. Oh wait, no, that's the other film.
Yes, that's the original prince. This is actually a prince with depth.
Thankfully, in Cinderella 3, I think it's called A Stitch in Time or whatever, they actually make the prince kind of funny, which is cool.
You know what? Like, of all the Disney sequels that were made, Cinderella 3 A Stitch in Time is actually surprisingly good.
There's quite a few Disney direct-to-DVD sequels that I really like. There's Lion King 2, and I would even say, 1.5 or whatever it was called.
That's 1.5.
Funny in not a gut-bustingly sort of way, but it's charming, you know? My only problem with it was it has a couple of songs which feel a bit out of place.
Dig-a-tana, dig-dig-a-tana, dig-a-dig and never get done. But yeah, oh my god, this palace. Also, we have the awesomeness that is Derek Jacobi as the king, who obviously most people will recognise as being the famous Shakespearean actor. Other people, well, partially myself included, would recognise him as being the master for 2 episodes of Doctor Who.
He was in the audiobooks as well.
Oh, he's in the... Yes, he is. Of course he is now.
He's officially known as the War Master because he fought in the war.
Ah, makes sense. So obviously he's been in many things across his career, and he has actually worked with Kenneth Branagh quite a lot, because obviously Shakespearean circles. He was in Henry V with him, and he was also in Murder on the Orient Express.
He looks pretty good in this film, I have to say. He
really does. I mean, he's only... I say only 79. But, yeah. And, I'm sorry, I can't actually like Derek Jacobi anymore. He went to St. John's at Cambridge.
Oh, no.
Yeah, he went to my college's sworn enemies, so no, it can't happen. And also, he doesn't believe that Shakespeare wrote Shakespeare, so...
Wow. I'm surprised he's allowed to perform in Shakespearean plays.
I know, it's him and I think Mark Rylance. Both of them very famous Shakespearean actors. Also, oh my god, random Rob Brydon.
I know, what the fuck?
I don't know, he's kind of out of place, but I love it.
So we're saying on the Royal Ball already, that's good.
Basically, yes, but also, have you noticed a certain MCU actor in the fray here?
Well, let me Let me figure out. Oh, is he the dude from 4, the wacky dude?
Yes, this is Stellan Skarsgård, who people would recognise as being Dr. Eric Selvig in the MCU. He's also Bill Anderson in Mamma Mia, and he's also Bootstrap Bill Turner in the Pirates of the Caribbean films.
Oh, Will's dad. Yeah, part of the ship, part of the crew.
Exactly. He's been in many other things as well. He's another person who's had a great long career. But I find it quite funny that obviously Branagh directed Thor and then he's brought him into this again. Basically, Branagh is one of those people who likes to collaborate with the same people again and again and again.
Why not? As long as you're casting new people more than old, why not?
Well, exactly. And also, as long as you're casting people who are perfectly suited to the roles that you're giving to them.
Exactly, and I think that's where it separates from, nepotism or cronyism.
Exactly. And I mean, you look at things like Edgar Wright's Cornetto trilogy, the fact that he's worked with Simon Pegg and Nick Frost so much is that they work well together.
Yeah, for sure. Jesus. Why is Rob Brydon in this film?
That's all he has in this film. You're not going to see him anymore.
Fair
It's just that bit.
Location porn!
Oh yeah,
I know a lot of it is matte backgrounds or CGI, don't worry.
I mean, yeah, a lot of it is CGI, but I mean, it just looks amazing. Also have to say, massive shout out to the costumes in the film. I mean, it's one of the things that got really highly acclaimed, and it did get nominated for the Academy Award for Best Costume Design in the year it came out. Unfortunately, it didn't win.
Oh, God.
But thankfully, I mean, it's not too bad because Mad Max Fury Road won that year. So.
Oh, phew. I thought that was the same year Suicide Squad took the Oscar for makeup and whatnot.
Yeah, no, I think that might have been 2016, I feel.
Mm-hmm.
But my memory of years of things can be a little bit hazy. I mean, I thought this film came out in 2013, no, it came out 2015.
Right.
There was a moment where I'd said, Tom asked me, when did the film come out again? I'm just like, I think it was 2013? No.
Yeah. I asked Flame to source a copy of this for us, and he was like, is it 2012 or 2015? Hang on, I'll ask Richie, the person who chose the film in the first place.
The next thing is because, when I was thinking about it, I was just like, well, I know I was at university at the time, because it came out around Easter, and I got back to university and pretty much, I think, that day or the day after, went by myself to the cinema to go see it because I want to see it. I mean, it partially, slightly also helped because, I wanted to see it, but also the short before it was Frozen Fever. Because they actually played an animated short before the film, which is kind of... You think about it and you just go, but they've never done that before a live-action film before. But then it makes sense because, one, it's Frozen, and I think they weren't necessarily expecting Cinderella to do quite so well. So they kind of dangled Frozen in front of all the little girls and thought, that'll get them to come and see this film. It sort of did in the end.
Yeah, it's funny. They did that Frozen short before Coco, and I actually
that was a bad idea.
I went back and I listened to the final song of it. Or I think I may have caught the tail end of it on TV, because I'm in for Frozen 2, not so much the short surrounding it. And the final song is really, really good.
Oh yeah, I mean, the really annoying thing is that I think it's Olaf's Frozen Adventure.
That's the one.
Short. It's actually a really good short. The problem is that it was a made-for-TV short that's about half an hour long, which you do not put in front of a film.
No, especially one like Coco, which has such an emotional gut punch to it.
Yeah, Coco didn't need that. I can understand why they perhaps thought it would be a good idea to do that, because they thought, Coco, not sure whether it's going to do so well commercially, because it is a bit of a hard sell if you think about it. But the fact that actually in the end it proved they didn't need to do that whatsoever is a beautiful thing.
So who's Prince Charming's man-in-waiting, I guess? What's his role?
So I believe that is the captain, who is played by Nonso Anozie. people would most likely recognise as being Zaro, Zoan, Daxos in Game of Thrones.
Right.
Also Tank in Rock'n'Roller, Sergeant Dapp in Ender's Game, and Ibrahim Kenyatta in Zoo, none of which are things that I would actually recognise him from. He's also been in Nanny McPhee and the Big Bang.
Yeah, let my son speak volumes.
Oh, I think, if I'm correct, so it says that he was Oberon in the TV movie Midsummer Night's Dream in 2016, which I suspect is the Russell T Davies Midsummer Night's Dream.
Oh, was it camp as a nun's handbag then?
I mean, yes, I have to say I'm not the biggest fan of that particular adaptation of Midsummer Night's Dream. It pissed me off royally.
Wow.
Yeah, because it did a number of things with A Midsummer Night's Dream that just didn't feel necessary. Like, it put it in this weird dystopian future setting, and I was just like, oh, I sort of understand where you're coming from with this, but it's not fitting in the vein of the comedy, thank you very much.
Yeah, he's a purist, is Rich.
Yeah, which is kind of hilarious. I mean, that said, I haven't seen oh my god, I can't believe I've just forgotten his name. That is really bad. Anthony Hopkins, his King Lear, which was on TV actually the other night, from when we're recording this. I haven't seen that yet. I'm quite excited. I would like to. I think it's got mixed reviews in general, but I'm quite excited. At least I think it's Anthony Hopkins.
Well, let's get back to the film here. They're preparing for the ball and whatnot. Cinderella is obviously not going to be allowed to go, but I would assume at this point in the lore, she is working on her dress and whatnot.
Pretty much, yes, although it's less working on her dress and more she's got one of her mother's old gowns.
Oh, okay.
And so that's what she's probably going to wear, which is really cute and sweet. And something that's actually quite useful to point out is something to do with the costuming. Oh yes, so here she is. She's fixing up her mother's old gown. But it's actually something that Sandy Powell did with the costumes in terms of like the fabrics used. So if you look at like Lady Tremaine's outfits, they're all like pristine, really rich fabrics. They look like well put together. But when you look at the Ugly Stepsisters' outfits, like they're made of like seemingly really crappy, tacky materials.
Yes, oh my god almighty, they look like a fucking box of Quality Street.
Exactly. And it's that whole thing of clearly like she's spending most of the money on herself and not necessarily on her daughters. And so there's that sort of, it adds to the sort of tackiness of the stepsisters' ugliness in a way, because like their outfits are as tacky as they are. But look at that gown. That's it's not maybe the most exciting thing in the world, but it's still pretty.
Yeah, pretty but practical.
Exactly.
Oh, here comes the letdown. We've all felt that. You're looking forward to something, but you don't get it.
Exactly. That's basically what potentially most of us are going to be like at E3, although to be fair, this is coming out after E3.
This is coming out like several months after E3. You numpty.
So you never... Well, it's before the next E3 after that, so you see, it can just cycle.
You can never just say you're wrong, can you?
Of course not, clearly. There we go.
Yep. This is the one part of the mythos that has to stay intact, I suppose.
One of the many things that has to stay intact, actually. But yeah, it's always quite a horrible moment to go through.
It's really jarring seeing like a very unique take on Lady Tremaine, because in Kingdom Hearts Birth by Sleep, Lady Tremaine, the queen from Snow White, and Maleficent are all played by Suzanne Blakeslee, or at least voiced, and they're the first 3 worlds in the game, so you get them back to back.
Yes, and also hilariously, Susan Blakeslee does actually sound like all of the original actresses, and it is basically the same voice anyway, which is quite hilarious.
So with an hour to go, we're getting into the magical portion of things, it seems.
Oh, definitely. I mean, we're about to get some proper magic. I mean, also, kind of one of the biggest bits of CGI that the film really has outside of, buildings and so on and so forth. But, yeah, there's a bit of comic relief going, but there's the dress transformation coming up, and just, oh my god.
What, is she going elsewhere to cry? A bit more private?
No, she's just running through the gardens, just thinking, I need to get out of here, but no, I can't.
Oh, this is a bit different to how it was done in Disney.
Yes, I mean, actually, when you look at the Cinderella that we're presented here, it's actually much more in line with, I don't know whether necessarily the Charles Perrault Cinderella, but actually like the Brothers Grimm Cinderella as well. It's the version of the story that tends to get presented most often in pantomimes, and also actually in the Rodgers and Hammerstein Cinderella. Cinderella does a kind deed to a sort of mysterious old crone who actually turns out to be her fairy godmother, which I think is actually a better way of doing this narrative beat.
I think so, yeah.
Because it's that whole thing of Cinderella gets her dreams by being the good person that she is.
By being selfless, yeah.
Yeah, it doesn't come to her just because she's sobbing on a bench. It comes to her because of who she is.
Like, don't get me wrong, I think, like, the original Fairy Godmother is iconic, and, bippity-boppity boo and so on. That version's fine. I think this version works better as a plot device.
Oh, definitely. I mean, obviously she's going to go full Fairy Godmother in a minute. But this is a pretty iconic moment in most other Cinderellas.
Oh, wow.
And it's really magical.
There we go. Yeah, that's Helena Bonham Carter playing Helena Bonham Carter, alright?
Pretty much. It's also quite nice because she is the narrator throughout the film.
Oh, okay. I thought that voice sounded familiar.
Yes, so that's another thing that I think makes it just really traditional, is that you have the fairy godmother narrating this entire film. And hilariously, even though this is Helena Bonham Carter being Helena Bonham Carter, she's actually effectively playing against type here. In the sense of normally she's in, like, well, obviously with her now ex-husband, Tim Burton, in, like, Cock's Bride, Sweeney Todd. She's always been in those sort of really dark comic roles.
Yeah, I think Tim took the Get Goth GF meme a bit too far in that regard.
Yes, so obviously this is big and frilly and very much not what you would expect Helena Bonham Carter to be doing, but it's such a perfect role for her.
I won't call her the most, like, deep actress ever, but I think I've, like, enjoyed her in every role I've ever seen her in. Like, she was great as Bellatrix Lestrange in the Harry Potter films.
Oh, definitely. I think she is actually a really good actress. And I think she does a great job here as well. And I think one of the things, I think it's her in one of the, like, interviews that they did for Cinderella, like, on, like, the extras, is, I can't remember whether Kenneth Branagh asked her to do the role, and she was just like, I'm not sure, especially when, they were saying it's going to be a really traditional Cinderella, and I think she was just like, are you sure, is this going to work? And then actually she read the script and she was just like, actually, you know what, this is actually why I quite like this. And yes, this is definitely the comic relief portion before, we get to the full-on magic.
I was gonna say, not sure about this, but it's funny to watch, I suppose. Oh my days. CGI is pretty good. Why is this CGI better than a lot of, like, the stuff in the MCU? I gotta say, like, love Black Panther as a film, but god damn it looks like 2002 PS2 CGI at times.
Well, you see, I think the reason for that is because the majority of the CGI in the film is, like, inanimate objects. It's this coach being made. It's stuff that is actually easier to animate. We're going to perhaps get a little bit of the moment of CGI of the animals transforming, because it's not truly phenomenal, but it works. And I think the reason for that is probably because, one, there's actually comparatively very little CGI used in the film. The majority of it is practical, and so clearly they would have had more budget to spend on the bits of CGI that are used to make it fit and work better than, like, most Marvel films, because the majority of those are CGI when you think about it. So there's a lot of animation work that needs to go on, so you've got to spread the money a bit more effectively.
I got you. Alright. Last one, I suppose. You can't drive a coach without a coachman.
Exactly.
Hilarious.
It's a bit ridiculous, but it works.
I think I prefer the straight-laced version of her getting all her stuff, like in the original, but this works fine as well, I suppose.
Yeah, and also it's a bit of lightheartedness after that kind of, a number of actually quite traumatic moments. Mother dying, father dying, cruel abuse, etc. But, yeah, this is the moment. And, oh, it's beautiful.
Right. Music's getting me in the mood already. Got the particle effects. Bit of blue in there. Very nice, very nice. Wow.
It's just, like, you compare this to the original one, and I'm just like, this is just beautiful. And actually seeing this in a cinema was just one of those moments of just going, this is like a stunning piece of work.
And now it feels like we're back in the film again.
Exactly. And I like that, because obviously that dress transformation was Walt Disney's like favourite piece of animation. I like that they've paid even more attention to it here, because it's like taking you just straight into that single moment of the dress transforming and just making it extra magical.
Let's say that the original animation in, like, the classic film was fantastic for its time.
Oh, yeah.
It holds up to this day, but that was good for live action, which is a lot harder to do.
Oh, definitely. And yeah, it's just stunning. And also, I mean, the dress is like, oh my god, it's beautiful. Like, you compare this to, like, Belle's ball gown in the Beauty and the Beast remake, and it's just like, they do not compare.
Oh, was it bad?
It was just kind of very nothingy.
Should we just say fuck it and cover that film?
I mean, you can do if you want to.
Alright, well, because there's a few spaces, like, left on the docket right now, because we record these out of order, some of them aren't all done and whatnot, so I could probably fit in one between, let's say... Well, I won't give anything away, but I can fit something in there.
Yeah, why not? Let's have a moan about Beauty and the Beast.
Okay, Beauty and the Beast, live action... Richie, that's your choice.
It is not my choice, it's yours.
Well, whatever. Your name's in the brackets. Time will forget who chose it first.
Time will not forget, because I will remind you. But, yes, I mean, yeah, I love this film, but I've not said it enough so far, I don't think.
Alright, so we got the stipulations. We must adhere to them.
Exactly. And actually, also, we get a little bit there of why the slippers are going to stay in the end, because they are the fairy godmother's gift to Cinderella. Obviously, there's everything else, but the glass slippers are kind of her full-on gift.
Well, everything else comes from the magic of the good deed. This is just, like you said, it's a gift, it's separate.
Exactly, which then makes it make sense as to why it stays. But also, I mean, there's a whole really fun thing with the slippers because I think they teamed up with Swarovski to make the glass slipper.
Of course they did.
Of course they did. But what's really also quite beautiful is that the first official trailer, well, the first official teaser that they released, which was about a year before the film came out, didn't include any footage from the film. All it had was the glass slipper kind of slowly being revealed against the background with Butterfly kind of landing on it and just being in crystal. And it was just like, it's one of those moments where you just like, yes, I feel safe with where this film is going. And that was quite stunning. And also, I mean, this ballroom is just like, oh my god!
Like, everything is just peak royal wankery, but I'm loving every moment of it.
Exactly. It's just, like, ridiculously regal and stunning, and I just look at this and just go, I want to go there. I feel like this might have been Blenheim Palace, but I'm not sure.
Yikes. Oh, it's wacky.
And also so bad. It's just like,
Tacky.
yeah, it's just like, oh, is that tacky going to come back to bite you on the ass here? Because, yeah, you can see the prince is just like, yeah, no, not feeling it yet. I just kind of want to go see the girl that I met in the forest, because she was kind of actually more my thing.
Yeah, kind of badass, actually. She, like, rode a horse and everything, had a bit of, like, agency to her.
Yeah, and also had, like, a really wonderful heart. That tends to help.
Derek Jacobi has such a wonderful voice.
Oh, he does. It's one of those... It's a thing that I've noticed with actually most of the sort of famous older British actors. Because, I mean, you've got Derek Jacobi, Ian McKellen, Patrick Stewart.
The three I was exactly thinking of.
Yeah, I mean, I'd say they're probably your key three classic British Shakespearean actors. There are others, but I'd say they're the three that you tend to lump together the most. I mean, it ties into the fact of, obviously, in terms of your British female actresses, you've got Judi Dench, Dame Judi Dench, Dame Maggie Smith, and Dame Helen Mirren. And I mean, I should also probably say that it's Sir Derek Jacobi, Sir Ian McKellen, and Sir Patrick Stewart.
Okay, calm it down.
They have all been given their knighthoods.
You're a fucking royalist. Look at you, your class wars and bullshit.
Hey, it's not that. I'm just using their titles correctly, hopefully.
I'm middle class, I'll have you know, Tom.
Yes, I'm very, very middle class.
I gotta say, I love the design of the coach in this version of the movie, how it opens up that way.
Oh yeah, it's like, it feels like it was once a pumpkin, but it's still incredibly regal and beautiful and stunning, and yeah, just all the same descriptive words that I have been using throughout the film.
She holds herself well for someone who's been living in squalor for the past few months.
Oh, definitely. And, I mean, also that would go some way to explaining the incredibly tiny waist she's been abused for the past God knows how many years.
Wow, don't you feel bad now, people mocking them for potentially using CGI?
Even though they really didn't.
Yeah, these people will never feel shame for that. They'll just nitpick and critique and bitch and moan and whine.
Exactly.
I protest. There's one more to announce.
Not necessarily to announce, but, oh, this is just another stunningly beautiful moment.
Look at that shit. Oh my god. Don't start singing or we're gonna cancel the ball outright.
Well, I don't think there's any singing, it's just beautiful classical music. I will say that they do actually have some of the original songs from the original Cinderella in the film. It's just that they are for the credits.
Okay.
So you have I mean, there is a bit of singing in the film. Don't get me wrong. There's a tiny bit towards the end, which ties back to a song from the beginning of the film that we talked over. But that's fine. And so you get the song "Strong," which was by Cinderella, I think her name is, which is sort of the pop anthem for the film, which is a beautiful song. You then get Lily James singing "A Dreamer's Wish Your Heart Makes," which is beautiful. And then you get Helena Bonham Carter singing "Bibbidi Bobbidi Boo." And that's your credits, which is a lovely sort of musical trail through.
I think that's a good compromise, honestly.
Yeah, it's that whole thing of paying homage to the original film without compromising the vision of the current one. And I think it's what allows the original Cinderella and this one to sit side by side. This one is not trying to replace the other one in any way, shape or form. It's just trying to be its own thing.
Well, the fact that her mother was in the movie to begin with, and even her father to a certain extent, already puts it far apart from the original Disney film.
Exactly, and I mean, personally, I really do enjoy this version of the film a lot more, and I think it's because it adds all those extra things in a manner that works for the story, but also gives it that extra bit of depth, but also it does manage to retain its pure sense of romantic wonder. And in a world where increasingly that doesn't happen, like, we've lost this type of film in a way. Like, if you look at most films released these days, they're that whole revisionistic style, so they're overly cynical. They don't like to say you can have an original fairy tale, whereas this film's quite happy to say, no, this is actually quite beautiful and pure, and that's okay.
That's a good point to bring up, honestly. All too often I see, like, and I don't want to turn this into a fucking anti-feminism rant, because that's not the point of what I'm trying to say here, but you can have both styles coexisting at once without one trying to trample the other. Like, I don't think telling little girls they could be a princess is inherently a bad thing. What they need to be is a princess with a backbone and some agency, and that's one thing the original definitely didn't, with her basically just being rewarded this trip to the ball for being sad and whatnot.
Exactly, and I think it's why there was frustration with this version, because ultimately it is still the same thing of she's... all she is just nice and good and so on and so forth.
Oh no, what horrible traits to have!
Exactly, people see her as not having any agency, but then on the flip side you've got to think, well, you've got this young woman who's been mistreated by her family. Of course she's going to potentially be more reserved and not necessarily go and do things for herself, because that's sort of been beaten out of her, effectively. But despite all of that, she still manages to retain her inner sense of goodness, where most people would be bitter and cruel by the end of it. And I think ultimately that is the vision that wins out in the way this film presents itself, and I think it's stunning.
That dress is fucking making its money's worth right here in this scene, I think.
Oh yeah, I mean, hilariously, there was actually, I think, a few versions of the dress. So basically they needed to change the length and how much fluff there was in it, because, like, for this she needed to actually be able to dance.
Right.
And in other sequences they wanted sort of the billow a bit more. So I think there was like maybe 4 or 5 versions of the dress. But also, Beauty and the Beast, that is how you do a ballroom scene tastefully.
Yeah, you'll dance with them or you will die.
Yeah, I mean, that's pretty much, and also they're going to be doing some not perfect dancing.
Oh, okay.
Well, at least if I recall correctly. But really, all the prince cares about is his one true love.
Yeah, he's only got eyes for her. They met for a day and now they're in love.
Of course, and even though obviously, you can't necessarily fall in love in a day.
Yes, postmodernism and fucking Frozen, like deconstructors. Just let people have their escapism from time to time. It doesn't always need to be, like Richie says, so cynical and realistic.
Exactly. And it's like the dream of true love it's okay.
I'm not sure if she's too impressed by this, but maybe I'm just reading it wrong.
Well, no, I think she is incredibly impressed. She's just thinking, you told me you were sort of just an apprentice.
Right, okay.
It's that whole thing of, because of what Ella has been through, because I'll call her Ella because that's really technically her name rather than Cinderella, she doesn't see herself as being able to get a prince. She doesn't think that she's worthy of it. She thinks, well, I'll just eventually, hopefully, fall in love with just some person and they'll love me for me. She doesn't think, oh, one day I'll marry a prince and that will be my life. She doesn't see that. She doesn't see herself as being able to get that. And yet, that's sort of exactly why the prince falls in love with her, because she doesn't want to be with him for his office, which obviously quite a lot of the other women in that ballroom do. She just wants to be with him because of who he is, and that's why I think these two versions of the characters work so well, because you can see that they very much are level pegging in terms of their wavelength. They think very similarly to each other.
They have great chemistry, I gotta say.
Oh yeah, and I think that's also part of the reason why this is just so beautiful.
What was the deal with the footman checking out that ticket thing?
So basically they were trying to find out what her name was, because obviously she just walked in. They didn't announce her because they weren't expecting her.
Right.
And they don't know what her name is. It's that whole thing of trying to get to the bottom of her identity. Because one of the things in the original film is that obviously she turns up, she dances, and then she legs it. And then it's only then that they just go, wait, what was her name? Whereas here, you can see that the rest of the palace staff have gone, oh, so he's clearly only got eyes for her, therefore we should probably find out who she is, because that's kind of important.
Yeah, get tabs on her and whatnot, but Lady Tremaine is doing a lot more here than she did in the original. Like, at this point, I think they'd be back at home.
Yeah, pretty much. But it gives that extra bit of force to her, because clearly she's doing everything in her power to get her daughters married off to the prince.
Yeah.
Or at least to gain advantageous marriages for her daughters.
Disgusting.
So that then they can bring in the money.
Like, a lot of people give the two ugly stepsisters a lot of shit, but they're just as much abuse victims as Cinderella is. They're just treated with more privilege.
Ultimately, yes. I mean, I think it always does depend on how they are presented.
Uh-huh.
So, for example, in Into the Woods, which may or may not be coming into this Disneython, perhaps.
Lordy.
The ugly stepsisters in that film are presented as pretty much cruel bitches. And so it's just like, really? You don't deserve to be happy because you're horrible.
Wow.
But then you look at the Anastasia of the original Cinderella, and obviously the narrative thrust that they went with throughout the Cinderella sequels as well with her, you can see that sort of there is actually a heart there. It's just that it's hidden by what she has been taught by her mother, and so on and so forth. And in this version, I think there's a balance of sort of, they are quite cruel, but it's more in that sort of catty bitchy young girl, like teenage young girl style, rather than active malice, which is pretty much what you get from Lady Tremaine.
Whoa, I think it's time to go.
I think it is as well, and we are about to get Kenneth Branagh's typical Dutch angle sequence, and I mean, it's quite an amazing one.
Well, I think every, director has their own signature moment and whatnot.
Oh, definitely, and Kenneth Branagh's is definitely the Dutch angle. He always includes a Dutch angle in every single one of his films. This one in particular is very impressive because it's a sweeping Dutch angle.
Okay.
And it's quite amazing.
Yeah, there you go, everyone after her. You gotta have a scene where she just barely gets within, arm's reach of him.
Basically, yes.
I like the little sequins or glitter on her dress.
Oh, definitely. Here it is.
Why? It had no reason being there, but it was there.
It had no reason, but it was very effective, and I really liked that. I think it was actually quite complicated to pull off, because obviously you've got to get her to move through that room effectively, you've got to swing it and make sure it's kind of properly canted, and so on and so forth.
Oof. I'll remember that dress and that girl. Oh, that's new. That wasn't in the original either.
Definitely not, but also it's really quite effective as well, because obviously the original King was just this sort of bluster of hot air, just sort of going, I'll kill him! And so on and so forth, whereas this King is presented as kind of wanting his son to be married, but it's more because he knows that he's not going to be around forever.
Okay, and the son doesn't particularly care for that.
Well, I think the prince is thinking more, well, of course you will be, you're my father. Because if you think about it, it's how most kids think of their parents. They think of them as invincible.
Oh, don't touch that nerve, Richie.
Yeah. And obviously there always comes a point where you begin to realise that maybe they're not. And that's obviously something that Cinderella's already had to deal with in her life. Twice. I think the prince has already had to deal with it once because his mother doesn't seem to be anywhere around. But yeah, so you've got that different dichotomy between them in terms of their relationship. It's a much more loving relationship, but also it's a lot more heartbreaking as well. And this is also quite a fun sequence. There is a bit more CGI, maybe a little bit cheesy in places, but I think it's still quite effective.
Wow, it suddenly turned to an action film.
Well, I mean, they've got to get back from the ball before they get caught.
Why would you ever lean out of that?
I don't think she intended to lean out of that. I think kind of the tilt tossed her a little bit. And there is actually a bit of film that they shot, but didn't make it into the final film. Probably for the best, actually, because I think it would have been a little bit too ridiculous.
Right.
Because obviously everything is turning back to what it once was. So the carriage is gradually going to shrink. And there was a whole bit that they filmed where Cinderella ended up kind of arms and legs bursting out of the pumpkin and sort of running along like that as it shrank, which would have just been kind of really ridiculous.
Too much,
quite
yeah.
funny. I think Lily James joked about it and was just like, I went through all of that, you didn't use it. But I think it's probably for the best that they didn't use it.
Why does the magic end at the stroke of midnight, anyway?
Because magic rules, I don't know.
Sorry, just a little nitpick, just came to the forefront of my mind.
Well, I mean, that's a general nitpick of pretty much all of the versions of Cinderella. It's just like, well, why did you put the stipulation on it, you crazy blooming fairy godmother?
Why didn't Aladdin just wish for more wishes or a new genie to get around the rules?
Well, because that was one of the rules. You can't wish for more wishes.
There you go. Arrived in one piece.
Just about.
Well, it's going to be an awkward walk home now.
Just a bit, yeah.
Now, you've only asked me one question in the film so far,
That
mate.
is true.
Would you like to do some more?
I mean, I certainly can do. So, main one, what do you think of the film so far?
Obviously, the mixing on the voices mean that it's always going to be a tad lower than everything else, and I can't turn it up too much lest it gets caught on the audio track.
Yeah.
But just from the visuals and what, like, character acting I can see here and everything else, it's a warm cup of tea, I have to say.
Oh, definitely.
I'm not enthralled, but I am glued to the screen, and there is a very fine line between those two.
Yeah, and I mean, I would say probably if you think about it, this is not necessarily the type of film that you'd want to be enthralled by, perhaps.
Mm-hmm.
Because it is just that very cosy, classic fairy tale type thing. It's the type of film that you want to watch at home by the fire with a warm cup of tea. And also, this is quite a nice touch, is that you've got the stepsisters going, like, oh, he looked at me, oh my god, it was amazing, and Lady Tremaine's just like, oh, don't be ridiculous.
See, that's what I'm talking about. You stroke with one side of the hand, you hit with the other.
Exactly.
Yeah, I'm sure that's the reason.
Of course.
Very funny. I definitely wasn't there incognito.
Definitely not.
Jesus, Rich. Nearly gave me a heart attack, though. That's not a real country, I'm assuming.
I don't think so, but I mean, this Cinderella doesn't really take place in a real country, so does it really matter?
There you go. It's yours now, rats. You can live in here.
They're mice.
They look more like a crystal slipper than a glass slipper, I gotta say, but that's just nitpicking.
I mean, what did you think a glass slipper was going to look
Shut
like?
the fuck up. You know damn well what I meant. When you think of glass, you don't think of it as being inherently, like, glistening and whatnot.
And that's true, but then you want to make it look magical. I mean, I remember when I did my panto of Cinderella. Which
Let's have another panto tale from Richie.
What did you expect? It's me. Which was actually the Christmas before Cinderella came out, and it's actually quite nice because obviously I've told the story before of how my nana and granddad met doing a pantomime of Cinderella.
Yes, you did, yeah.
And then 2014 was the year that my granddad passed away, and I did my Cinderella panto in memory of him and dedicated to my grandparents. But yeah, because obviously low budget, by which I mean very, like, really low budget. I'm talking like maybe it might have been like 175 quid.
Mm-hmm.
Had to sort of do what we could, and the glass slippers, I think, were like sort of made of plastic, which is kind of pretty standard. But it was just like, normally you try and get like sparkly silver shoes. That tends to be what you get to be the glass slipper, but they were very much not that. Made a joke out of it and everything. It was quite fun.
Sorry, I will admit, I'm just on Twitter right now, only because it was a down moment in the film. Now the emotion's coming, but here, how's this for a tweet? Archaeologists working at the ancient Roman city of Pompeii, Italy, uncovered the remains of a 30-year-old man who appears to have survived the initial eruption of Vesuvius in 79 AD, only to be killed when he was struck by a large slab of stone.
Wow. Also, probably not the time to be telling this
Oh,
story,
God,
because
no,
the king is dying.
Yeah. Well, at least it was, like, thematically appropriate.
And also, this is pretty much one of like the most heartbreaking bits of the film as well.
Jesus.
Like, I remember when I was watching this in the cinema, obviously, still grieving, and I was in the cinema and saw this, and I was just like, oh god, you monsters, and was just crying throughout most of it. I was just like, why?
Yeah. Did anyone give you any funny looks?
I don't think they did. You see, I've mastered the art of silent crying in the cinema. It's an art, one that I'm definitely going to have to do when I go, because I've got by the time this audio commentary comes out, I will have had my lovely week in London seeing all the shows, and I'm going to see quite a few shows where I'm going to get to the end of it and just be an emotional wreck. Mm-hmm. So hopefully my art of silent crying in public will be good then. But it definitely helped me through this one, because this is just like a truly heartbreaking moment in the film. And also really does further that whole depth to Kit, and also the sort of relationship between him and Ella. Because they effectively parallel each other. They come from kind of vastly different circles, but they've both gone through, if not entirely the same shared trauma, but partially the same shared trauma.
Yeah, everyone feels grief.
Exactly.
If I didn't know better, I would say this is the start of a new Pirates film.
Thankfully it's not, although obviously there did end up being another Pirates film after this one came out.
Blue Woman of Bluesville, Bluesylvania. Wow, I wonder which of these three characters it will be.
Clearly, I mean, surely it could not be the blonde one in the blue dress. Like, totally could not be her.
Like colour-coded like the friggin' Power Rangers or something. That one footman was like even looking in her general direction.
What I really like is it's just sort of a wonderful bit of simple acting, of just that realisation of going, actually everything might be okay. And it's just really sweet, and then we get this.
It's gone. Where has it gone? Mice, what have you done?
Was not the mice.
But if not them, then who? Oh, my days.
Yep. I remember this was actually in one of the trailers for the film, and I know a lot of people were just going, oh my god, spoilers!
Oh, seriously.
It's just like, guys, like, original Cinderella has been out for, like, eventually coming on a century. It's not that long yet. We're still quite early. It's probably more like 60 years, I think.
But I can't actually remember the closing beats of the original film. Did she confront Cinderella?
Sort of. So what she ended up doing was she realised and then locked her in her room, which is going to happen here. But what she did was just lock her in the room, and that was it. And then the mice had to go and help her save the day by getting her out. Or unless, you've played Kingdom Hearts Birth by Sleep, Aqua did pretty much all the hard work and stalled to make it happen. Mm-hmm. And then what happens when they're trying on the slippers? It goes to go to Cinderella, and Lady Tremaine trips the Grand Duke Dandini, and the glass slipper smashes, and then Cinderella's just like, oh, but it's alright, because I have the other slipper.
Slippers come in pairs, you daft bint!
Exactly, but obviously here they shifted it up a little bit, because Lady Tremaine realised, and actually here we get sort of full-on evil villain monologue, but it sort of describes her motivations in a way. And explains why she is the way she is.
Uh-huh.
And I mean, it's a very effective villain monologue in her, lime green outfit. And it works, I think.
Sorry. Bitch says what? I mean, there's a bevy of sharp-looking sticks behind me. I could just run you through.
But yes, there we go. The slipper is no more.
I'm not? Okay, I guess we're not getting the answer to that question.
Not fully, but you effectively get the gist of it yeah, she is not young and pretty and good, and yet she's got 2 daughters that she needs to look after in a big house where they've got no money and can't maintain their lifestyle, and she's come from a world where that's what you do. You marry for money.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's what culture dictated at this time. Like, what is Lady Tremaine going to do other than, in order to keep going, find a way to marry off her daughters to rich men, because otherwise there's going to be no money anywhere and they're just going to be destitute. Also, because in Cinderella she sees everything that she wishes she could have been, but now she's just old and bitter and she hates it.
Yeah, hates herself.
Yeah, and that's why she then projects all of that onto Cinderella.
There's a lot of walking scenes in this movie, I've noticed.
There is a lot of walking, but I mean, to be fair, I'd rather have a lot of walking than a lot of standing still, because then the film would just be quite stationary.
Well, I mean, it's to show off the costumes specifically, and God bless them for it, they look fantastic in motion.
Oh, definitely. I mean, also, there's quite a funny story of them trying to sort out Richard Madden's trousers.
Oh.
Yes, for exactly the reason you're probably thinking of right now. Because of the way sort of the trousers are, they had to find a way of getting the bulge to be kind of reasonable, but not look like a full-on David Bowie Labyrinth bulge, because then that would just be wildly inappropriate for child's film.
It would bump up the age rate at least by 1.
Exactly. So they had to try him in, I think, all sorts of drop straps, which were all of varying levels of discomfort, to try and get just the right bulge size.
Can't believe we're fucking discussing this.
I know, it's ridiculous, but these are some of the things that happen when, you're creating a film. Certain things that you never thought you would ever have to do suddenly become kind of big issues to jump over.
So hang on, Lady Tremaine went to speak to the royal. Why are they now doing the glass slipper thing exactly? Effectively
because the prince is still on the line of, no, we're doing this because I want to find her, but the Grand Duke has effectively thrown a spanner into the works of saying, well, we need a princess. If you effectively bartering and saying, if you don't find her by whenever, then you must marry
right
the Princess of Sarah whatever. And also, he's going to try and do everything to make it so that, he doesn't find her.
Goddamn 3D printed shoe!
I know, it's just like, Seriously, it's not going to fit any of you because it's for a foot so small that they had to CGI it.
Jesus.
Which is quite hilarious.
Oh, you tried. Meanwhile, in Jurassic Park, I guess?
No, we're just going elsewhere in this beautiful world and...
Oh, bless her.
I mean, seriously, that is ageism, but I mean, yeah, it was no way in hell it was going to be her.
It's not even ageism, it's just obvious-ism.
Yes, and I mean, I do like that is sort of a strain of this search, of even though sort of there's that whole thing of, yeah, it's clearly not going to be her, but still try it because we have to, which is in much better contrast to, you know, most of the other Cinderella tellings, where it's just like, we must try it on every woman's foot, and it's just like, yeah, but clearly no. You'll know it when it's her, because you'll be able to recognise her. But there we go.
Oh my god, what the fuck is she wearing?
Something still relatively beautiful, but it's a darker shade of green. It's a much more jealous hue, I would say.
Well, I mean, that's how colour theory works, I suppose.
Exactly.
We're trying to talk to you from the language of mice, but this isn't classic Disney, so you can't understand us. My head is not a fucking footrest, do you mind?
She's like, it's not going to fit, you silly cow.
Oh. Yeah, I don't think this is going anywhere, to be honest, girls.
Yeah, I don't think it is, and that's quite a face.
Amazing that the glass slipper hasn't shattered yet, honestly.
Oh, I know. But yes, this is one of the things that I think some people had issues with, in the sense of Cinderella doesn't actually do anything to escape. She doesn't necessarily even try to. And I think people will just want to give her some extra agency, but then I feel that this is very in line with her character because it's that whole thing of just being calm within herself and thinking, well, it was never meant for me, clearly. And while it is ultimately luck and the help of a few mice, they do help her out here by opening a window. But it does mean that she gets her dream, and she gets it because of who she is, not because of necessarily what she tries to do.
Yeah, I'm surprised the cat has had such a diminished role in this, but again, it goes with the mice having such a diminished role, I suppose.
Yeah, you take out the mice, and really you've got to take out the cat, because the cat was their antagonist.
That's right, I was here all along, underneath the ceremonial blue blankie of the royals.
Exactly, surprise! It is me, Kit!
Ah, time for me to get my sing-song.
Not quite.
Every one of these movies is just waiting for their solo.
Pretty much, yes. And I mean, Cinderella's basically the only one who gets it, because it's just like the lavender blue, dilly dilly, lavender's green. I will love you, dilly dilly, you will love me.
The fuck kind of song is that?
It's a proper classic, sort of little ditty. It's an English folk song and nursery rhyme dating to the 17th century.
Oh shit, he just went backlog on me. He dated that shit.
Exactly.
Wow.
Get in there, Cinderella! It's just like laying down the law without actually being a cruel, heartless bitch. It's like managing to get those jabs in without being cruel, and really, that's a skill.
Oh, that's a good shot.
Oh, definitely.
Just all alone in that cold tower. Well, I mean, there were magical mice with the intelligence of humans helping her, but
Still.
why have a picture of a vase of flowers?
Because that is sometimes what people paint.
I know. I just found it a bit weird.
I mean, the main question would be, why would you have photo frames with spoons in them? But really, that is a question that many people have asked for many years.
It's very clearly her. It's very clearly her.
Of course it's clearly her. And they both know it.
No, you are Ella. Ella.
Hey.
Well, that's cool, because I have all of those, so I'll make up the difference.
Yeah, it doesn't really matter. And actually, what's also sweet is that they clearly do truly love one another.
Ha! Take that, cynics!
Exactly, and it's sweet.
It's interesting that they'd make, like, such a royal and privileged position sympathetic, but I'm glad they did.
I think it's the only way of getting the character of the prince to work.
Yeah, people with money and privilege are still people, you know.
Exactly, and it's one of the things of the Prince of Cinderella can sometimes come across as like childish and petulant. That whole "you're holding a ball for me where all these beautiful women are going to come, but no, I don't want to marry any of them." And it's just like, dude, seriously, that's a bit childish. So the only way is to sort of go to make him an engaging character is. And to make it someone who you want Cinderella to fall in love with is to make him that sympathetic character and just
I was winding up a clap. Oh. Well, they were good in the end, I suppose.
Sort of, a little bit.
And I will now kill them using this very slipper. I'd like that, Cinderella. I'd like that a lot. Let's get you a pair of proper shoes.
Yes, ones that don't shatter. And also ones that will actually, stay on your feet when you're running.
Mm-hmm. Well, out of it. Oh, this is awkward. Oh no, she won't like that.
Of course she won't. And it's totally in keeping with who Cinderella is, but it's that type of thing which that just completely shatters Lady Tremaine, because it's just like that's the worst possible thing for her. Like, I think she'd be able to live with everything if Cinderella hated her. But how can you hate her? And also, I mean, I know I said that, that the ball gown dress was beautiful, but I mean, also, this wedding dress is gorgeous as well.
I know,
Just everything.
Yeah.
Everything in this film is beautiful.
Oh. Oh, not my king, my kit. Oh.
Just... Oh, I love it so much.
Alright, Rich, we've come to the end of the 2015 adaptation of Cinderella. How did you enjoy it?
Oh, I love it so much. It's visually gorgeous. It's got a beautiful soundtrack by Patrick Doyle, some great performances, and I love that it is just a traditional, lovely, sincere telling of the story that manages to capture all of that old school charm without letting it drop to cynicism. And I think it's so effective and so beautiful. And as I said, it's easily my favourite of the live-action Disney films so far, because it's just so wonderfully beautiful.
I agree, to a certain extent. I didn't think it was the best film ever, but the first hour I feel was definitely better than the second, just because it felt a bit rawer. Like, it wasn't as Disney-esque and idealistic. And I enjoyed that, but the second half was good as well. My attention did start to wane, as you might have been able to tell by the little Twitter visit. But set design was marvellous. Costume design should have got the Oscar. Performances, well, obviously I have the volume low, but I can still make out what they're saying for the most part, was wonderful. Music was really good. I feel this version of the story is better than the original Disney one.
Definitely. I feel that it is actually head and shoulders above the original one, and I think it's because it adds in all that extra stuff without compromising the story at the heart of it.
Yeah, wonderful casting as well, all around.
Oh, definitely.
So yeah, that was Cinderella 2015. We'll see you guys tomorrow for another HellfireComms Disneython free com. Bye-bye.